Okay, perfect. Okay, so lovely. I'm so glad everyone came. I'm going to be talking about this project specifically, though I may touch on my past work a little bit. So essentially what I'm going to do right off the bat is share my screen, which has the PowerPoint on it. And I'll be talking in the background. If you would please turn off your video. So you'll see in the participants bar, there are cameras. If you can turn off your video, that way we can all see the shared screen that I'll be putting up. And lovely. Okay. And I think maybe I'll take myself out too. That way nobody has to look at that. Okay. So essentially my show, I called it Scene because I am focusing on the whole idea of visibility. In this particular time, of course, we're all hidden behind masks and such, but I think that that we're still showing up. You know, if ever we're out and about and we are wearing our masks, we're really showing our character and our personalities. So essentially, I'm covering a lot of different kinds of materials here, or different themes. It all has to do with something I thought that James Baldwin, the author, did a really nice quote about love never killing people, but rather the absence of love. And I figure that recognition and representation is the first step towards love and recognition and validation, honestly. So I think that this show has to do, the overarching theme is to do with being seen and being honored in a way by being represented. I've done some other work that had to do with LGBTQ recognition. This was a piece that I did in response to the Pulse massacre in 2016. There are 49 bullet holes for the victims in that massacre. And you can vaguely make out a boot print and a burnt edge and that sort of thing. The idea being just to call attention to loss and bullet holes in the place of the stars in the flag, I thought was useful for that. This piece was basically a response to the election of Trump. Honestly, I figured things were not going to go well, and I don't consider myself a Nostradamus, but I mean, things aren't going that well. But I was concerned about the LGBTQ community specifically, of course, in that he chose Pence as his running mate, who has a horrible reputation for discriminating against LGBTQ. So I figured it was going to be problematic. This painting shows the pin that was used. Larry Kramer, back in the 80s, founded ACT UP, which was an organization essentially to encourage people to come out of the closet and stand up for what was right and to stand up for justice for the LGBTQ community. The background of this picture is from a photo that was taken of the concentration camps, where the homosexuals in the camps were forced to wear the pink triangle as an indication of the reason why they were there. They didn't wear the Star of David, they wore pink triangles. So, and then that's just my date of birth. So, lesbian portraits, otherwise, historically. I thought I would bring in some of the artists that I find inspirational in talking about representation. Rosa Bonheur, French woman in the 19th century, was, I mean, she wouldn't necessarily have, labeled herself as a lesbian, but she most certainly was. She was with the same woman for 40 years, and would often include herself in her paintings. So this is a famous painting in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, which I really love. It's astonishing to see up close. But that's her sneaking into the picture. You'll notice in the original painting that she's wearing trousers. That's significant because that was actually illegal in France at the time for women to wear trousers. It was considered against nature and such. That was men's clothing, and so it was not allowed. Rosa went on to get a license. She had to ask permission from the government so that she could wear trousers. And she said that it was so that she could work with animals and freely do her work as an artist, since she primarily painted animals. So they bought it, and she was allowed by law to wear trousers, and that was hugely important. This was a portrait painted by her soon-to-be partner. She was with a partner for 40 years until she died, and Anna Klumpke, an American actually, asked to paint her, and spent a great deal of time working on the portrait, and then they became close, and Anna was with Rosa Bonheur until her death, which was shortly, I think it was in maybe 1900. So they were together for very long, but it's really poignant, I think, for one woman to paint another woman, and to do it in an honoring sort of way. You can see she's wearing her honorary medal in this painting, and it gives a nod to her work as painting animals in the background there. So just very moving and significant, because of course LGBTQ people have always existed, and it's just a matter of whether we pay attention and know that they are being represented. So in this instance, that's a lovely example of that sort of honor. This piece is of Radcliffe Hall, and this is much later, well, I guess 20 years later or so, painted by Charles Buchel, but this is an interesting portrait because Radcliffe Hall, who wrote The Well of Loneliness, a famous, really depressing book about lesbian life in Paris in the 20s, in this painting is seen wearing unconventional clothing. She's wearing a men's jacket with a cravat, and her hair is short. She is holding a monocle, which was actually symbolism back in the day, back in the 20s especially, for lesbians to give a signal to each other that they were part of the community. And it was sort of an understanding, as well as the pinky ring, which you'll also see in this painting. This sort of thing is hugely important. I mean, again, we've always existed. It's just a matter of whether we get a moment on the world stage. This next painting is by the next artist that I want to talk about, but I wanted to make it follow immediately after that picture of Radcliffe Hall, because this is Radcliffe's partner, Una, who was a lady, and like a titled lady. And she was, again, is wearing the monocle, has non-conventional clothing on, and is rather defiantly, I would say, looking at the viewer of the painting. And I just think it's really marvelous. I think that it's stylish and intriguing, and I like the sort of strong, defiant vibes that she's giving off. So Romaine Brooks was a lesbian artist in the 20s, living in Paris, and she painted her circle of friends rather as I'm doing. I mean, we're basically twins, just not really, but she was, you know, she had money, so she was able to make her own decisions. She has a really super interesting background. If you ever want to look into it, just super crazy story of growing up. I'd love to see a film. But in any case, she was in a circle of friends who were of means. They had money, and so they were able to dress as they liked and gather as they like, and throw little salons, and they were isolated from, you know, they rose above basically the persecution that was inevitably at the door in that era. This is my favorite Romaine Brooks painting, Peter, a young English girl. This actually is a painting of her friend Hannah Gluckstein, who went by Gluck because she preferred that it was non-gender specific. I just think this is a wonderful, dashing painting. She too is wearing unconventional clothing. And the Peter refers to the fact that they gave themselves little nicknames for when they got together in their little salon. And it was, again, sort of a defiant gesture. So that's really lovely. Now, Gluck was also a painter, would you believe? So this is a portrait, a self-portrait that she did much later in 1942, still defiant. I think that this is a lovely portrait that presents a woman in a very unconventional sort of way, which feels really affirming to someone who is who doesn't necessarily fit in with the regular heteronormative standards. To see a painting like this is really significant, and to understand that people have been like this always, and here they are being represented, and they had a chance to portray themselves, and it's so meaningful. More recently, I've really enjoyed the work by Sarah Jane Moon. She is an artist out of New Zealand. This is a self-portrait of hers. She has done a number of paintings of couples, lesbian couples, which is really powerful. I really enjoy these pieces in part because not only are you seeing the women in the, you know, they're holding hands, that's really meaningful. They're wearing wedding bands. But I also am super nosy, and I love to see what kind of things they have in the background. So that's really fun out of these, I think. But Sarah Jane Moon has gotten a lot of fame just recently. She's being interviewed for loads of magazines and, you know, publications. She's been in the BP Portrait Awards show 2 years running, and that's a huge deal. The British Portrait Gallery does a giant show every year of only portraits and contemporary portraits. And so for her to have gotten into that for a couple of years is really amazing. And since she does largely concentrate on lesbian portraits, that's an enormous deal in my view. Again, part of the importance of being out is to have the recognition, to be seen. Now, masks. In this weird moment, we are, of course, wearing masks in an effort to protect the community from possible infection from COVID-19. Back in the day, back in 1918, they were also wearing masks. I just thought this was super interesting. One of my goals in this show is to capture the moment and show that this is a historic moment that needs to be seen. There should be a record of this moment. And so I wanted to have my friends and people, acquaintances in my circle, wear masks to capture this moment. I like this one because the cat is also wearing a mask. It's hard to see, but I think that's fabulous. And even the police wore masks back then, which is less common now, apparently. This being back in the day, they were still dealing with the Kaiser at that point in the war, but they were already stressing that it could show the individuality of the wearer. And so that is largely what I wanted to do in this show, which was talk about how we are able to be still individuals, even though we're wearing masks and half of our faces are hidden. We're actually still able to glean a bit about the wearer of a mask by looking at their eyes or looking at the choice of fabric that they chose for their mask. It's actually really exciting. The portraits that the selfies that I've received from my sitters have all had different masks. I was concerned that we might have repeats, but we have not, because it's a fun opportunity to express your personality by the mask that you choose to wear. So the third element of the show is about selfies. Now, I thought this was pretty interesting. This is a headline from Bloomberg back in 2015 that suggested that portraits were the new selfie and that they'll cost you $15,000. I think that seems like a reasonable price, but that may just be me. In any case, I thought that was really interesting that painting people is becoming more popular these days. I think when I heard a quote from Eckhart Tolle, a philosopher, and he said something to the effect of when you look at an item or person, a subject matter of any sort, and then you go to the trouble of creating it in art, that shows you have really honored the subject matter. So from time immemorial, back, thousands of years BC even, to represent someone was to honor them, and to recreate their image was an honor and something that was a way to make them a significant member of the world. I thought that this was an interesting sculpture in that this Seneb was a dwarf who was in the king's court. And I thought that the composition was interesting in that his symbolic children are where his legs would be if he were sitting there and he had long legs. And the fact that he is sort of a reddish brown and his wife is a pale color speaks to how men were out and about and women were to stay indoors. So we're gaining a lot of information from this. And of course there are hieroglyphs on there as well to give us more information. So this is an important artifact of a moment and of specific people. So portraits have been significant always. It's a human impulse to make a mark and to be seen, to really be remembered. There were a series of mummies that were done in the Fayum region of Egypt, generally from 100 BC to 200 AD, that involved paintings that they would put on top of the sarcophagus. And I thought this was interesting because it totally looks like tiger woods, but I thought that these were really beautiful and naturalistic. They look very realistic, wonderful shadowing, and there's gold leaf on it and that sort of thing. This, though, would have been someone who was basically in the upper classes. Traditionally, people who were able to have portraits, who were mummified and were having these grand memorials, would have been rich and powerful. Technically, you know, to be able to afford to pay an artist to create an image of yourself was expensive, and there were not many artists around. So to have a portrait made meant that you were somebody. And that's significant in that when the camera came around, suddenly that was changed. This is the first recognized selfie, as it were. He took, Robert Cornelius took a picture of himself. He looks quite dashing, I'd say. But once the camera came into use and became more widely available, suddenly the portrait game changed. It became a sort of democratized medium. Suddenly more people were able to make their mark, to make themselves seen. I put this piece in because it's an interesting recent phenomenon. Richard Prince is a quote unquote artist, I'm not really certain about that title, who takes other people's work and or photos and acquires them for himself and turns it around and says that he has created art from that. Just recently, there was a bit of a controversy actually, because he made this show called Portraits that was exclusively screenshots of other people's Instagram selfies. So at first, people who heard that they were in this show were flattered, like, wow, I must be pretty, or I must be interesting, or what an honor. But in actuality, he was just blowing these up, printing them, putting a comment at the bottom. And then because he has a reputation in the art world, he was able to sell these for as much as $100,000, of which the subject got $0, which is just the worst in my view. I don't approve of it. But the point is that Instagram and the new phenomenon of selfies is a way for us to each have ourselves seen as we would see fit, that we have the opportunity to take a billion pictures of ourselves until the right one comes out, and then we can put it out into the world and have other people acknowledge that we exist. I gathered a collection of lots of pictures from the internet of people wearing their masks just for this particular slide. But I did want to, and you can see everyone is in sort of a different pose, everyone looks a little bit different, but their personalities are really captured, and I think that that's really lovely. And I'm so glad now that we have this technology where we can take pictures of ourselves and put it out there, and that it's sort of a conversation with the world that we're able to participate in because of selfies. We are actually encouraging people to post their selfies in their masks at #SeenAtFirehouse, which is really fun. That's something that we are excited to see so that we can see everyone's images. So we would encourage you to submit for that. And then I'm gonna head back, trying to see where everybody is. I'm not getting the gallery view again. Just a moment, sorry. I see all participants. I want to go back to gallery view. Sorry for the delay. I'm still not very good at this, I'm afraid. Well, I suppose one thing might be, oh, that's it. Everybody, I'd be delighted to have you start your videos again so that I can see you all. That would be really lovely. And yay, there you are. Fabulous. All right, so essentially that's my spiel. I wonder whether there might be any questions. I think we do have everyone on mute at the moment, so if you make a point of unmuting yourself, or you can also raise your hand. I think on the chats, or doesn't look as though there have been any questions in the chat box yet. So anybody got any questions about what's happening with this project or the historical stuff that I talked about? I just think that sort of thing is super interesting, keeping it in the context of the big picture, as it were.
Yes, I have a question.
Stacy, yeah.
It was very interesting.
Okay.
And I was curious, what sort of process did you have to go through to find all those different artists and art being done through that history? That was really interesting.
Yes, well, part of it, I grew up, part of my upbringing was in Europe, and my mother was an art teacher, so I have seen all of the museums. I've been to all of the art museums, essentially. And I knew that I was lesbian from early on, and I didn't see myself represented. I didn't see unconventional portrayals of women. Largely, it just didn't jump out at me. And of course, there weren't specific labels next to the pictures and stuff to really indicate one way or another. So I was really moved when I was in grad school, and I actually did a semester in, or at least a summer in London. And that was during the anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the decriminalization of homosexuality in England. And as such, they were having exhibits in all of the museums across London. So Portrait Museum, the History Museum, the Modern Art Museum, all of them were having LGBTQ exhibits. I was in heaven. It was fantastic. So I was able to suddenly see that there were a bunch of pieces of art that I'd been missing this whole time. And it made me want to dedicate myself to not only finding more artists and seeing who was there the whole time that I just hadn't recognized, and also to commit myself to become a part of that art history. It may be that I won't be at the Tate Modern down the road, but in the meantime, I consider it an important responsibility to be visible and to help my community be visible. So that's where all that started. So that was a good question. Now there are loads of books and such that you can find that have curated lots of LGBTQ artists as well as subjects. So it's really marvelous. All right.
And Barbara, there's a question in the chat. It says, it's from Allison. It says, if we were in person, what would the gallery look like?
Aha, yes. I'm working furiously to try to get as many paintings done as I can for this show. Each piece will be, it's 12 by 12. I'm doing them on panel, on wood panel. And each piece will also have a little story next to it. I'm asking all of the participants to submit a story about their experience of COVID. So they will be spread out in the white room of the gallery. I don't know if you've been to the Firehouse Art Gallery. It's really beautiful. It's in an old firehouse, an actual firefighters station from the 1800s, and it's a really fabulous space. In any case, the gallery is going to be in the main gallery will be the main show. And then in the space where I'm working now, in the South Gallery, it's a smaller little gallery, we're actually going to have another show that is also by a member of the LGBTQ community, and he will be showing his quilt work, and I'm super excited about that. So we'll be announcing all of that as we go on. But so it should be, I would imagine that Elaine will be doing some sort of walkthrough, right, with cameras for people who don't feel comfortable coming to the space.
Yes, we definitely will. We'll do a live stream walkthrough.
Perfect. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to show you all of the stories and all of the paintings and the quilts and all that sort of business, if we can't all get together, which who knows at this point, right? But the Firehouse Gallery has been opening on the weekends and some during the week by appointment, and everyone's required to wear masks, of course, and we're all being safe, and there's hand sanitizer and all that sort of thing. And people are starting to come in dribs and drabs, little groups, oftentimes, and they're coming to the gallery, and it's really lovely to see people in person. And I know it's kind of a different experience to see it in person than it is to look at a screen, but hopefully we'll be able to have people actually come and look up close. I don't want you touching them or no licking the paintings, anything like that, but it is different when you can see them in person, isn't it? Any other questions?
Barbara, I think I saw you in Lafayette in front of the Collective painting.
Yes.
And I, at the time, didn't have time. I was doing chalk hearts for an event. And so I wanted to know what you were doing. And the next thing I saw was you creating your selfie portrait with the mask, and wondered if that was what you were working on or something totally different.
Right. The selfie mask painting is going to be for this show, for the scene show. What I'm doing in front of the Collective in Lafayette is actually a piece that was the Lafayette Urban Renewal Authority had asked for artists to paint utility places around town. We're not allowed to use the actual electrical boxes. Like other towns are able to do that. Like Longmont has all of their utility boxes painted and all that sort of thing. Unfortunately, that's because they own their utilities, whereas we don't. We're part of the XL thing and they don't allow us to paint those. But we can paint bits and bobs. So that's actually a sprinkler box in front of the Collective. And I'm painting something on there for that. It's just sort of a beautification effort. And given that if people aren't familiar, the Collective in Lafayette is an art gallery, but it's also the offices of the Arts and Cultural Resources department in Lafayette. So Lafayette really is an art town. And we have a beautiful space that has ongoing shows. They've just started opening up a little bit for, I'm sure, limited hours, but they put on beautiful gallery shows. And if you do go to the collective, maybe you'll see my piece out front. So that's exciting. But thanks for noticing. Yes, I went to that beautiful vigil as well for the Black Lives Matter that we had. It was really moving. Lafayette's pretty awesome, I would have to say. Yeah.
You might be biased since you are have the mayor's ear.
I do have the mayor's ear. Yes, the mayor of Lafayette is my fiance. So I always like to tell people, I am pretty much the first lady of Lafayette. I don't, you don't need to bow and stuff, but that's nice. So, yep. So I may have a certain amount of bias for Lafayette.
I have a question, Barbara.
Yes, go ahead.
Of course, I've shown the 2 time lapse to your dad, and both he and I are wondering, how long does it take you to paint?
Right. Longer than I would like, but that's a good question. Generally, I would say it's about 60 to 80 hours for each one.
Oh.
That's really speeded up. It's I think 8 times the high speed filming that it does. So it's really, really fast. Yeah, it's a lot of time. And so that's kind of a thing, is that it is time consuming, but portraiture is challenging and rewarding because it is so precise. And so it may look like a person, but until you get it just right, it won't look like that person. So lots of little detail-y stuff is part of why it takes so long. Part of it is
an amazing job.
Thank you. I'm just too slow, but I love this time lapse thing. If anyone has a chance, go look at Instagram, where it's just Barbara Rudlaff. I'm under that on Instagram, and you can see that I'm putting up the time lapse videos of the paintings as they're in the works. I think it's really useful for people to see that there's generally an ugly bit in the middle. That's what I'm always telling my students, is that all art is fixing. It's placing marks and then fixing it, and then putting something down and making an adjustment, and adjusting and adjusting and adjusting. And that's all that's important for people to recognize, because I think when people are trying to paint something and they get to the middle, they think, well, I'm just not good at this. But that's not the case at all. You're just in the middle. That's all. You got to keep going. So it's kind of a vulnerable feeling to put those up to show that it's ugly in the middle, but I think it's actually an important exercise in transparency. And I just think it's kind of interesting to see something so quickly come to fruition. So I appreciate that. I'm glad that you can show him that.
Oh yeah, he likes to see them.
That's awesome. Wonderful. Well, I'm so happy to see everyone's faces. So are there any other questions, or I know that some people at the firehouse probably do want to give you some additional information and such. I do so hope that you will be able to come to the actual show in real life in September. That would be really lovely to all get together, even 6 feet apart and wearing our masks. But I would love for you to see the paintings in real life. But in the meantime, I will be posting progress videos, and the firehouse will do these walkthroughs with where they can show you the gallery and the paintings as they look in situ, as it were, in the actual gallery. So, all right. I think that's...
Well, I will unmute.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing what you were doing in the gallery and being our artist in residence right now. I often share the space with you, and we missed you. Well, I missed you last week, so
Yeah.
it's nice to have somebody else that is in the gallery working as well. So, but yes, thank you so much for sharing your gift and the way that you kind of put together what you're working on and your show. I did want to say, so I'm the executive director at the Firehouse Arts Center, and I did want to share that we have an open call for entry. So it is for our 2021 exhibition calendars. We're accepting applications. If you are artists, if you went to the firehouseart.org website, if you click on exhibitions, and then underneath that there is opportunities for exhibitions. We are also accepting applications for the 2021 Artist Occupied program, which is what Barbara is in the process of doing right now. So there are those applications as well. And I wanted to stress again that we are hoping that you guys will take your selfies wearing your mask. And I guess I'm calling them maskies, but I don't know. I have to come up with a cuter name other than that. But yeah, post them on your social media with Scene at Firehouse, and we will collect them from there. But other than that, thank you so much to Barbara. And also thank you to Grace, who is our curatorial assistant who put this together, as well as our curator, Brandy Coons. I don't believe that she is on, but thank you to her for putting this on as well. And thank you guys for joining us. So
Yay.
I think that is it, unless Barbara wants to do the last send off, or Grace, or.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful that you all came today, and I so appreciate your support. It is really exciting to be in residency at the Firehouse. It's such an honor, and the space is beautiful to work in. And so if you, I think a lot of you are artists. If you are interested in applying to be an artist in residence, it's a wonderful experience. I can highly vouch for that. And do stop by the Firehouse. I'm generally there on Saturdays as well. If you just want to stop in and say hi, I'd love to see you with your mask. And that would be really lovely. So thank you all for being here today. That's really a wonderful honor. I appreciate that. All right, fabulous. I'm going to stop recording and then I'll sign off.